And at NBC, when I got the job, I thought, well, I'll start by calling the people who are alive who've got streets named after them on the lot. And so I called Steven Spielberg and Jay Leno. Say, hey, I've got the job here. If I can be of any help, just let me know. Because really what you are is in a relay race with the next poor sod to get the job. Okay, it's not about hanging on, but if you don't acknowledge that you've got both a predecessor and a successor, all of those cliches hold true, which is chances are the thing that's going to be buttering your bread are decisions that the last guy made. So I didn't order Last Comic. I didn't even order America's Got Talent. But when you are actually like a boss who's an employer, the people you're meant to take care of are your employees. And that extends to lots of people, not just the 20, 30 or 40 people that work directly for you, but the hundreds of people ultimately that are on shows. So your first thing is really just to keep a creative flame burning.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest today. Wow, I can't believe I have him here. This is one of these watershed moments. Are you allowed to say watershed moments for me? Because this is what I intended this podcast to be when I started 12 years ago. My first guest was Doug Herzog, who was at the time was the president of Viacom, and he ran 7 networks at the time, including Comedy Central. And when you can get somebody who's been a former or a present network president on a show, on a podcast, then you're making a difference for the artistic world. And I'm grateful today, and please welcome my guest, Paul Telegdy.
I was talking to the fellas just before the podcast, and the last time I heard my name on a podcast was the week before the election when Donald Trump said it out loud on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Did he say it right or wrong?
No, he said Telegdy.
Did he tell the story about you and him, or just
a little bit of it? It was about, he was, let's say, framing his version of his departure from NBC and where that fell into his political career.
I'm so glad you said that word, because I had in my mind, I was going to talk about this word with you that happens so often in the high levels, in the corner offices of network television.
Gosh, now you got me thinking.
Framing the story.
Oh.
So what is it about the levels of network television where some of the most important things for people in their job, out of their job, inside trying to move up, it's all about framing things a certain way? And I believe, in my mind, framing is a big part of the business of being successful in television. I'm going to go one step further. You don't get to be the chairman and CEO or network president of a network like NBC by just being given the belt. Here's the belt, here's the title belt, put it on. You're in the chair. You have to work your way up to that chair, and you have to beat a lot of people to that chair. And as Doug Herzog so eloquently said, and it's the most important thing, you have to know that you're renting the chair.
I always said, well, any of those jobs where, well, let me frame that. Let me go back. So let's just say by the time I ascended to the chairmancy, or the chairmanship, I think it is, of NBC, broadcast television had already been through, I would say, its most substantial loss of audiences. When I started in the business, being the head of NBC Entertainment was probably the biggest job in entertainment it was when I started in the business, that was Friends, ER, West Wing.
Who was the president then, Warren Littlefield?
I can't think, because I was in the UK, I'm British, but
I've interviewed Warren Littlefield.
Oh, really? So watching from afar, NBC was a sort of, an impossible mountain to climb, and it never really sort of entered my way of thinking. But, to frame the story of how you, well, to frame the story about how I got ahead in corporate America is one, I was very much an outsider. And, I would say that an outsider from Hollywood, I didn't go to school here, wasn't born and raised here. I I'm not American. And the number of British executives that had gone before me had ascended to similar positions. But
I've interviewed Bill Hillary too.
Bill used to run Comedy Central.
He's English.
Yeah. So everyone's journey and promotions and things like that are going to look very, very different. For me at NBC, I arrived with a job which was where we met, which is my job was alternative series, which would now be called unscripted or reality, but it was an alternative.
We met on Last Comic Standing.
Yeah, Last Comic Standing, which was, I think, like in its third season when I arrived in 2008. But the network was in dead last place, partially not, just in terms of where they were in the ranking, and that ranking was everything. It dictated how much money the network made, but it was, a business where you got a daily scorecard of how well you're doing. And the opportunity at NBC was pretty clear, which is if you're in fourth place, the only way is up. And
don't lose your place.
What?
Don't lose your place.
Okay.
In your opinion, more desirable and exciting job taking over a network that's in first place or one that's in last place?
Well, again, if you're up for a challenge, and I was once described as a man of action by one of my bosses, and he said you should be less of a man of action. I took that slightly the wrong way, if I'm honest. But if you're sort of someone that likes a challenge and is very competitive, I think, and in terms of, frankly, what the effect was economically, going from fourth to first, way preferable. Underdog status for long enough to make good decisions. It's strange how I think if in first place or as market leader, you can make worse decisions sometimes. So for me, it was definitely preferable to be in fourth place. And I've completely forgotten what I was saying before. Except that it was part and parcel of, I think, of the reason for my ascendancy at the company was literally directly linked to the performance of the company. So I got promoted because we started doing well again. And well again in corporate America should always amount to one thing, which was making money and making more of it than you did the previous year, or getting larger audiences, which translates to making money. Now, the whole world has changed in terms of how you make money on TV or in audiovisual businesses in general. But back then, it was ad sales, and that was ratings. So in that respect, there was a very clear, transparent scorecard that bosses could look at. It's like, company's doing well, great. We better keep that guy. He seems to be doing pretty good things. So
when you got the Arbitron ratings and the Nielsen ratings, were you the kind of guy who woke up at like 5 a.m. and had them in your email box? And
I was based on the West Coast, and the guy that was my notional boss when we first arrived was also on the West Coast, but his boss, Jeff Zucker, was on New York time. And I guess even on New York time, he got up freaking early. Even so, the LPMs, the local people meters, which were just these, I can't remember how many markets, but it was like a snapshot of some of the bigger markets. You would have a good sense of what the rating was at 4:30 in the morning, Los Angeles time. And there's a whole generation of us that we still get up before sunup, because if you knew that your day was going to be good or bad based on something that had started at 4:30 in the morning, you better pay attention. And what's more, you would frequently start to get emails from New York at about 7:30 in the morning their time and carrying on. So, yeah.
In terms of like shows, like I always look, at the risk of getting canceled, you're on a first date with somebody and you say, what do you do for a living? And they say, hey, I run my own accounting firm or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're taught in the world to believe what people tell us, you know, within reason. You know, why would somebody lie to us or tell us an untruth? But I know there had to be times when you had an extraordinary show. You watch the show and it's incredible. And then the ratings come out and it's like nothing. Were there times where you're like, this cannot be true? There's no way this show is too good to possibly...
What? If I don't know, I couldn't put a number on exactly how many shows I would take responsibility for having decided that they were to be made and then launching them. But I'll be candid, you kind of know. There are very few surprises. They normally go the other way. Rather than something you believe in, love, and think is fantastic doing badly, is something that you think is kind of B- or even a C+ doing remarkably well. So do you see what I mean? It's like you tend to get a positive, negative surprise rather than the other way around.
It's going to be hard for you to remember. Tell me a show you championed. You know, you're kind of that guy who banged the fist on the table, championed that maybe not everybody believed in it as much as you.
Well, it wasn't one of mine, and it wasn't unscripted, but I just, you know, when you had a front seat to...
But everybody doesn't always know. Let me just use an example of network precedent things that happen. When I interviewed Tom Werner, first thing he does when he's with Marcy is he goes out to Bill Cosby, says, we want to do a show together. Bill's, you know, a challenging guy, doesn't always do things the way, whatever. They came from ABC. They were ABC executives. They were the head people at ABC. Naturally, they walked Bill Cosby into ABC. The powers that be say, this isn't a television show. We're going to pass. They go to NBC, which is the fourth-ranked show, fourth-ranked network. They take it. It brings them to number one. Next show that Tom and Marcy go out with, Roseanne. Naturally, they go to NBC, where they're killing it. Hey, guys, we're going to walk Roseanne right in. They say, hey, we don't get it. This isn't a television show. Then they go to ABC. They take it. It goes to number one.
Yeah.
So it's not always evident.
No, it's and by the way, I always say part of the scorecard is not just the shows you pick; it's the shows you passed on. And I'm sure somebody said that to you before, but you rarely get credit for passing on something that then goes on to sap resources and be a complete flop. So it kind of goes, it goes both ways. And, you know, in terms of shows that I champion that I know probably would have struggled to go the distance, I think it turned into one that's, you know, proven to be a cultural phenomenon. It was bluntly very early on in my career at NBC, and Parks and Rec was going to be cancelled for sure. In a year when there weren't any obvious replacements for it, and also the kind of, are you kidding me? It was one of the few shows I watched on our own air that gave me sort of immense pleasure. And it was also when we were in dead last place. And
it was kind of like, I always felt when this happened, and I thought, you know, I was thinking of you at the time, like, what is he thinking? What's going, because I looked at it as like I looked at Arrested Development. Maybe some would argue that Arrested Development was a better show, a film better, produced in a different way, whereas Parks and Rec was produced similarly to The Office. But, you know, Arrested Development was produced in a more traditional single camera way. But both shows fucking great, both not doing well, but one Arrested Development got canceled
Yeah.
by that network
Yeah.
because maybe they didn't have a champion like you.
Well, no, do you know what? There were plenty of champions for it, including the creative team that making it. But I did make a speech, and I'm prone to occasionally just sort of cutting through the clutter and taking permission to use a British accent in the way that it's meant to be used. And I remember saying to Assemble Company that included the big bosses, if you cancel this, we stand for nothing. We've got nothing, but this is great. And I didn't say, if you cancel it, I'm walking out the door. I think I said it, if you cancel this, a lot of people will walk out the door, or no one's going to resign on principle over the buying or selling of TV shows. But it felt like a sort of creative principle was being broken. And I did. I made a stink in a boardroom, and then they went off and actually did recommission it. And I've told that story a couple of times to people, and it's just a moment that I take in a career where, you sometimes have a job description, but when you work for one of these companies, the sort of general health of the brand should be on your radar as well.
So one of the things that I love about your job that you held so wonderfully is that, to me, if I were in that job, I think the thing I would worry about more than anything else is people keep walking in, they keep pitching shows. Sometimes huge people are pitching shows who've got shows all over the dial, and it's like, but this is what they just pitched me. But how do I say no to these people? They've had 8 hits in a row. How do I say no? And then if you say no, what happens if it goes to another network and it's a huge hit and you're like, oh my God, I can't fucking believe I did. I'd be worried most about what I pass on, not what I.
Like I say, there's no scorecard for what you pass on, but I think
isn't. I think there is.
There is, but you don't get credit for it when you tell your boss. No, if it goes on to be a massive success elsewhere, trust me, you'll find out about it. I don't think I had a single instance of that.
So that never happened to you?
No, but I had to occasionally buy shows from people that should have known better than pitch the show that they were pitching, and all they were doing was pressing home their advantage as a Uber producer. And buying under duress, or buying because you really should, is just a kind of guaranteed recipe for mediocrity. Hit makers normally get the name hitmaker because they make hits, but they do normally make them in conjunction with decision makers. And I think that knowing how to say no to someone who says, but come on, look at my track record, is one of the more difficult things to do in the job.
I remember the last comic standing, and this might be revisionist history, so please tell me.
There's a hell of a history to that show, Barry.
When you came on, you had a vision of how to accentuate and add to the ratings, which you did. The choices you made, certain things you did, even some things you don't think you did, but you did. I know what you're saying. You came on the third season.
I came on the third season. I did not like this portion in the reality show. I thought that was just trying to squeeze too much out of what stand-up's proving to be a great format on its own.
And so the show was canceled. The show was canceled. A lot of people don't know this. The show was actually, there was a show that was after the show, which was, and still is, an amazing show. If I'm not mistaken, was it Family? It was an animated show by
Katzenberg. Was it that one wonder?
The Pride.
The Pride of Lions.
So Katzenberg has a show, this is the most powerful guy in show business at the time. He has a show and he is not happy that we're next to his show. And so I don't know what happened. You know what happened. But for the first time in, I think, television history and competition television show history, a show was canceled and not aired when the finale was just the last thing to air to find out who the winner was, Alonzo Bowden. So
That was before me, wasn't it?
that's the third season.
No,
wasn't it?
but I think that Pride and that was the year before. Was it 2007?
I don't remember.
Oh, come on, Barry. We've got Wikipedia. What are all... Barry makes out that this is some show shot in a closet. There's like 20 people working for Barry making this happen. 4 camera operators.
Does it really matter?
No.
Okay. Who won the year you came on?
Oh my God, I can't. You really are
Come
stretching.
on,
I should have gone on Wikipedia
you got 20
and checked it
people
out.
working for you.
No, but what I would say is that, look, this was before Web 3.0, and YouTube just got going really in 2011 with, or was it 2011? I feel like lazy, maybe 2007, 2008, but the forum for breaking comics on television had frequently, I'm listening to your Mark Maron interview, forgotten that comedy is pitting comics against each other in a competitive format is a long tradition of that in the comedy world, whether it was, winning a competition to get onto the college circuit or winning Barry Katz's management services, that this was before the internet. So how a comic became nationally famous, there were very limited options. The late night shows didn't have as many comics as people remembered.
No, they didn't. And even today, Jimmy Fallon has 12 comics a year. That's it.
Yeah, but
meanwhile, there's comics like Andy Huggins who are 75 years old who don't even do the late night show, and they do like Don't Tell comedy, and they become like a huge star at 75.
So, Last Comic, I think, was an incredible platform for comics. And honestly, the amount of times I've driven down the Sunset Strip, which I do ever more quickly without slowing down for reasons we can discuss, the amount of times that Last Comic standings, ''s, is still the reason that the comics being marketed on the marquee of a comedy club. I've been around the country, and you will frequently see from Last Comic standing still.
Yeah.
And now that ages us because, of course, the internet's taken over the world of promoting comics. But what was fundamental, and I know that it's a show with a complicated history, and we always really wanted it to be in the hands of people that loved traditional stand-up and the disciplines that, because you've talked to endless stand-up comedians about, that you need some miles on the road, and you need to have worked on material not in a vacuum from audiences and suddenly pop up with one viral clip, that the disciplines of the show, it did actually require them to be quite serious comedians if they wanted to, and seriously devoted to the art of stand-up if they wanted to succeed on the show. And I look at the names that are still around, like Felipe Esparza, Eliza Schlesinger, a number of...
Amy Schumer,
Theo
Vaughn.
The people that we saw on that show was sort of extraordinary. Now they wouldn't come within a mile of broadcast television. I mean, why would they? They can get a bigger audience tomorrow on the internet.
They wouldn't.
Yeah.
But the Theo Vaughns, Amy Schumers, Eliza Schlesingers, and Felipe Esparzas at that level that they were today would. And I believe there's many things that could happen. So, for instance, like, I've always wanted to do a show, like, probably be a show that the Saudis end up doing, but a show where it's like, hey, listen, we got a $10 million first prize. We got 10 comedians for all in. Just it's one prize, 10 million. Everybody else loses, and I'm one of the 10 biggest comedians in the world, and you have a chance to win $10 million. I'm going to get a lot of people. I'm not going to get Chappelle. I might not get Burr, but I'm going to get some fucking huge comedians to do that. And with it,
I think you're right. I think you're describing the Riyadh Comedy Festival, aren't you?
Yeah, and we just, but no, but there's no competition. So imagine just a simple stand-up competition. 10 of the best comedians in the world, $10 million, winner take all. And each show is an elimination of one person, and that's it. And the world votes.
You think you can book that, Barry?
Of course. But there's certain people who don't care about the money. I mean, Dave Chappelle can make $5 million a weekend at Madison Square Garden. Bill Burr can do very well. Kevin Hart, they're not going to do it. It would have to be $100 million.
Well, there you go. That's what I think that one of the things that...
But Dave Chappelle is doing the festival, and Bill Burr is doing that festival.
Yeah, look, the money's
and
good.
And they're doing that festival. I don't know how much money they're making, but I would have to presume that it is not under $1 million.
It's a long way to go. So they probably fly comfortably, and I'm sure that... I actually think that, like, the American people have a huge sense of fair play, weirdly, when it comes to, like, competitions and competition shows. And that rewarding someone that's already financially successful is at least falls into the kind of, it may not be Chappelle, but they'll still be a household name.
Okay, so let's say...
Are you pitching me a show? I don't have a checkbook anymore, Barry.
I know.
It's amazing.
So let's say $10 million first prize, $10 million matching to your favorite charity. I think it would be done. But whatever. I think that show would work. Anyway,
well, look, but the fact is that comedy continues to fulfill the adage, which is funny's money, everything else is, you know.
But let's get back. I actually... had so much fun when you don't think I did, but I had so much fun when you were in charge of that show, because I'm dealing with Peter Engel, who's like, you know,
eccentric and wonderful,
and just like, and is very opinionated and wants things the way he wants them. And he always had me around. I was like fired every year, but somehow I would end up being on the show. I don't know how. I couldn't do anything with the comedians because I had a 67-page contract that said that I couldn't.
Well, look, everyone was worried that this was kind of the Barry Katz show. I was thinking about this.
Here.
No, but do you know what? Weirdly, if I'd have known more about you, because honestly, you were always presented to me as like, this is kind of Peter's comedy guy. And then, you know, what's a comedy manager do? If I'd have known who you were, and I mean not what you did. I didn't know what you did. I really wouldn't know what a comedy manager did back then. I was just that this was someone that came with legendary Saved by the Bell producer Peter Engel. I would have definitely. I was thinking this during the Mark Maron interview that you did. I would have looked at you through very different eyes, and you're very modest. This is and quite. You were sort of, I would hate to use the word lurking, because that, you know, we know what a lurker is, right? But I wish you hadn't lurked as much, because Peter was such a big personality that I feel like we would have really benefited in many more ways if I frankly had known that you were the comedy manager and he was the producer of Saved by the Bell.
Well, they wouldn't let me they made me sign this contract.
Well,
what's her name? Susan Ross, and I couldn't go in the meetings.
I think she just retired, or if not, she may just be about to.
Susan Dale Ross. Yeah. I loved her. But she, you know, and every year Peter would say, Barry, they want you out. They want to fire. Every year from year 3, 4, 5, 6. It was like, and I don't know how I ended up there. And I think what bothered people is that literally there'd be this first meeting of everybody, and then we'd be in this huge conference room with like 50 people in it. And twice I did something that I think people didn't like me for.
Do you know what? Can you remember?
It's
obviously he remembers.
I had these DVDs that were in CD jewel cases, the plastic cases. And I had, each year I had something in this jewel case. And as the meeting started, I would just fling the jewel case to the middle and it would be spinning around. And I'd say, before we get started, I just want to say my prediction. This guy's going to win. And you're like, Barry, we haven't even picked the comics yet. You're doing it again. You're doing it again. This is why you can't be.
But by the way, we could have made a much cheaper, shorter version of the show that way, which is we just hand out $10 million to the person that Barry picks, which seems to be the show you want to pitch.
But it was Felipe Esparza was one year, and Josh Blue was the other.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And by the way, one of the things that people loved about the show is that they saw things they didn't see.
Yeah.
And if you think about where the world was, you definitely put up and made a platform for all kinds of different kinds of comedians as well.
I also want to ask you something that is sort of a little sidetracky. Well, I mentioned Josh Blue, who has cerebral palsy and won one of the shows over John Reap, who's probably not doing too well right now. But I hope it's not true what they say about him. But anyway, what I notice about television, even since we work together, I don't know what it is. You could be the most talented disabled person in the world, and for the majority of all television shows, they never work. I mean, Peter Dinklage works, but he technically is just, the way he is in his role is just like he's like a regular man. He's just littler. It's not like I considered him to have a disability, but he he would say he has a disability. And just like Brad Williams would say he has a disability as a comedian. But I find that our specials with stand-up comedians on television, no disabled people. Musical artists who are big, no disabled people. Sitcoms, dramas, no disabled people. Like, remember the days in the...
well, look, I wasn't expecting to come up. I don't know if you have any...
Why is that?
Do you have any disabled family members or close family members? Do you talk about ableism with anyone in your life?
Yes.
Yeah, so...
Is it a thing where... This is why I'm asking you, because you know and I don't know.
No,
Is there some kind of algorithm on television that just says, the audience is kind of like, they're not really rallying around that person who's disabled. It makes them feel uncomfortable.
Look, I think I'm not sort of an expert on what it is to be disabled or to experience ableism, but I have spoken to a friend in the entertainment industry who's, in spite of become very successful as a producer, and there are, people who are not disabled or don't have anyone close to them or in their life that experiences what it is to get funny looks from people in everyday life, let alone put yourself out in front of millions of people, is that sort of people who are fortunate enough to experience no, medical issues, or people in good health, or people that consider themselves to be those things, do not take comfort from other people's disabilities, and it makes them uncomfortable. And, as I say, this friend has described to me, it's like, you'd think that cerebral palsy was contagious, literally, that is sometimes how it feels that they're treated. But you should rightly be proud of his success on the show and subsequent success.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And I have so many things I have to ask you. I'll never have enough time, but about the chair, the network president chair, as you're ascending through the ranks of NBC, when I'm working with you that first season, whatever was the third season or whatever it is, and we used to go toe to toe all the time, and sometimes in the side areas behind stages behind the trailer.
I'm really interested because what did toe to toe mean for you?
Toe to toe meant that permission to speak freely.
Of course.
Okay. Last Comic Standing, because of your understanding of what the audience wanted. See, I'm a comedy guy. Yeah. So what I'm understanding, what I believe the audience should want, is extraordinary premises, extraordinary punchlines that you're not expecting, and extraordinary star quality. But what you knew that I didn't understand is very, just look at the first season. It's not about the performances. It's 50% is about the story. And we need to have people who can sit in front of a mic, documentary style, and be able to tell their story so the audience feels something for them and wants to follow them week after week and wants to root for them. They don't want to just root for them because of their performances, because the lyrics of a comedian are not as heartfelt as the lyrics of a musician. And you knew that. And so what happened was the show became at times a casting session as opposed to a stand-up session where somebody like was better looking and they would get like a beautiful woman who wasn't funny would be on the top 10 versus a comedian who wasn't appealing, who was wholly funny and got a standing ovation and he didn't get in.
Again, I have to say my memory of that is substantially different, and particularly when I think about who the judges were over the years. So I think the last season the last season made had Jeselnik as host, Norm Macdonald. Was Roseanne Barr on that season as well?
I believe so.
So the comics judging comics, we wouldn't have got, certainly with the judges we had who were very involved in the progression of people through the competition, that I struggle to find an example of. Now, again, remember that at the time we were making America's Got Talent as well.
And that's the next thing I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, we can get there. But that the combination of, appeal, the contestants on America's Got Talent, the people with all kinds of, let's say, differences in kinds of appeal, but what the audience for traditional network television at the time really wanted story. I don't think there was an aesthetic. Felipe Esparza isn't a particular aesthetic,
but the story, and
tell me.
This is so important about what you said, because a lot of people they just in television or even in films, it's the story. The story is what that drives people towards watching. It's always the story. It's the hero's journey. It's all.
Well, no, but you've got
is there ever a movie in history that has done well without a great story?
Well, no, but I think that it's the. You could give it as an example of, isn't it interesting how in the contemporary comedy scene, most of the successful stand-ups are giving people incredibly deep insights into the person that they really are or what their real story is, whether it's, you mentioned Bill Burr and Theo Von. Well, I think the audience's understanding of their inner lives is, on a weekly basis, and sometimes feels like an hour by hour basis that they're revealing the truth about who they are. Now, they better be able to deliver gags and do great material and have a good hour or whatever our criteria were when we were picking comics for Last Comic. So, and when you think about some of the people, you started the conversation by citing a kind of Cosby example, and for all the reasons why, let's just say the world changed around Bill, or he got found out, or whatever happened, that perhaps people demand a bit more transparency about the person, who the person really is, in order to follow them as a comedian, because they face some severe disappointments as their life as a fan of comedy. So somebody's personal story is incredibly important to the audience. They could come and tell be a completely different character or comedian on stage to what their actual story is, but the audience likes to know.
And with America's Got Talent, again, this is just my perception.
Yeah.
And it might be revisionist history. But I remember Peter Engel, the way I remember it is you gave Peter Engel a choice. Mm-hmm. I got America's Got Talent here, Peter. We got the NBA, always comes on. They always have
NFL.
No, but it's the NBA that was coming on.
As a competition.
Yeah. No, it was just like they would have their games on I believe Tuesdays and Thursdays or something like that, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And and you gave Peter a choice or something, whatever it was, listen, you can be on Tuesday during the summer, you can be on Wednesday, I'll put America's Got Talent wherever. And he chose a night that wasn't as good a night, and America's Got Talent chose a night where there was, I think, less competition on that night. And that year, we saw that show really soar, and our show not really do that well. Now, granted, America's Got Talent, a much more incredible variety of stuff to see than our show. It's understanding why that would do better. But I think that was like the beginning of the end when that happened, because it was like the visual of seeing one show pass another show like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I know what you're saying. Last comic was on for 9 years or whatever.
We rested it and then brought it back, didn't
Yeah.
we? And I think that's because there were just a huge amount of comedy fans, and I think that in the sort of, you know, the last time that stand up had done which was a really, because the promise was always, we'll discover someone that we can get a 200 episode sitcom off the back of it. You know, that NBC surely knew one thing, which was how to make good sitcoms at a certain point in its history. But the comedy world for sitcoms had changed largely to the single camera format. And we had 30 Rock, The Office, Parks and Rec, and that the traditional multi-camera comedy that was the preserve of the successful stand-up, at least for one season to give it a go, no longer really existed as the final payoff. And the world had changed around us. But the other thing was, and you know, a lot of those shows do come back down to casting, and you would say as a comedy manager, well, if you're being honest, you'd say there are not an infinite amount of really successful commercial working comedians, and it takes someone that's really learned the craft and has put together a load of gags and created. You hear about how hard it is to create an hour of comedy for a special. That in many ways we needed the kind of well to replenish as well, because casting that show was really difficult, Barry. There wasn't, and that's one of the reasons why so many of the people are still famous today, because the pool was a bit smaller than I think people imagine. With America's Got Talent, you know, 1 minute you've got a dance troupe from, you know, 20 people, you've got a solo singer, and one in every 17 acts there's a comedian.
So the girl with a feather.
Well, there's always something.
A girl with a feather and then sticks, and you're like, what
yeah, you know, and it's and I think that it was, you know, went a long way from a pure stand-up point of view, because we also found out that people really like to exercise. Very, very few people that are for everyone stand-up. And you probably know better than anyone who those names are today. Yeah. But it's still a show, I think, that has a really strong legacy, and you should be really proud of.
I am proud of being involved in it. I was proud to spend time with, you know, Peter, who was legendary in children's television, and to work on reality with him, and to work with NBC, and to also work with, you know, extraordinarily intelligent people like yourself, who I never considered myself to be, I'm not trying to shit on myself, but I never considered myself to be intelligent, emotionally intelligent, but not intellectually intelligent. So when you get to be in a room with somebody like you, you know, you can either be elevated or you can be depressed. And I'd rather be elevated. And so I like I said, I have so many questions, but so again, we talked earlier about renting the chair.
Yeah.
So you get the call, you're getting the promotion. Mm-hmm. You know, before you're getting the call, there's other people up for that gig. There's other people they've talked to, but you got the gig. Mm-hmm. When you sit down in that chair for the very first time in that office, what went through your mind? I'm talking, you walk into that chair, you walk in that office, you open the door, you sit down at the chair or the desk.
It's funny because again, I suppose I'm quite old fashioned when it comes to this. I worked at the BBC before NBC. And again, I think that all of these institutions have changed, and the whole world has changed, and I just have to be aware. But I was kind of incredibly proud of the BBC when I worked there. I was a happy employee, and I was really, I was a company guy. And similarly at NBC, I was kind of really proud of the institution and the people that work there and the kind of body politic of NBC. But at the end of the day, we're all just worker bees, okay? And I consider myself creative, but I'm not an artist, okay? And then there are people who are creative and artists that really are the people that prop up any content company. It's one of the reasons why the price tag for talent is so high, because sitting in every executive suite, there are some people who are quite sweaty and insecure about their own real worth to the business. You've had plenty in the chairs here, okay? There's a lot of scam artists, okay, who, yes, frame the story and manage their own promotion and get to where they are in the business without actually having the kind of emotional intelligence or talent spotting ability, or, I don't know, I guess a dollop of creativity that can really make the difference in a decision. And at NBC, when I got the job, I thought, well, I'll start by calling the people who are alive who've got streets named after them on the lot. And so I called Steven Spielberg and Jay Leno. Say, hey, I've got the job here. If I can be of any help, just let me know. Because really what you are is in a relay race with the next poor sod to get the job, okay? And, it's not about hanging on. But if you don't acknowledge that you've got both a predecessor and a successor, right, all of those cliches hold true, which is chances are the thing that's going to be buttering your bread are decisions that the last guy made. So I didn't order Last Comic. I didn't even order America's Got Talent. Okay, but my job is to damn well make sure that if I'm taking over the torch on some shows that my predecessors or the companies involved in, that it is just my job to keep them as successful as keeps, let's say on Last Comic, is each one of these shows is a commune of about 50 to 75 to 100 people for whom it's their primary source of income, right? I don't know, what was the crew call sheet on Last Comic while we were shooting?
It was probably like close to like, I think 70 or 80.
70 or 80 people for whom that show not coming back is devastating for their next mortgage payment. Well, no, the whole business has changed because no one works in Hollywood anymore. Okay, so that's different. But when you are actually like a boss who's an employer, the people you're meant to take care of are your employees. And that extends to lots of people, not just the 20, 30 or 40 people that work directly for you, but the hundreds of people ultimately that are on shows. So your first thing is really just to keep a creative flame burning over a longer period than your own.
But also what's fascinating that I'm getting from you is nobody sits down with you and says, hey, Paul, we're going to put you in a room with 3 network presidents from different networks who aren't anymore, and they're going to sit down and give you some advice on the things to look out for that are kind of shitty and the things that are...
Look, it's
like nobody gave you advice. Nobody.
Well, no, I mean,
I'm talking about without you asking.
No, not without me asking, but no, but I'm friendly. I was friendly with a number of my peer group and predecessors and things like that, and everyone has their own version of the wisdom that amounts to how to keep the job for the longest amount of time. But I think that I'd worked at NBC for quite a while and really worked, frankly, at the coalface of almost every department. Whether it was marketers, ad sales, affiliates, people. I saw how many people, frankly, rely on the success of senior managers or bosses, and the decisions that they make really, really affect those people's lives. Even if it's like slightly frivolous requests like, I don't really like the artwork for this thing. Can you come back with 3 more versions? And that sets 20 to 30 people into a panic. So that the and by the way, not anymore. All of these places are way stripped down and very streamlined. But the decisions you make in that job really affect a lot of people. But what's interesting is the only people is a very, very small number of people you hear from actively on shows, and they rarely care anything about the dozens of other people that are involved in the show.
What percentage of the time are you looking over your shoulder?
Well, in my case, and let's just say I left my job involuntarily in quite spectacular fashion right at the beginning of the pandemic. Obviously, not at all.
I love how you say involuntarily. It's fantastic.
I've only been fired once. It doesn't feel good for anyone when you're fired.
I've been fired more than once.
Well, I think that's interesting because that comes across in the podcast in terms of that is what the manager or agent relationship with client is one where the realities of kind of, I've done all of this for you and now you're firing me. I'd witnessed that not just with you, but with a number of manager friends where it's just so thankless at a certain point.
You ride the bull as long as you can. Then.
Yeah.
Look, if somebody told me, I'll tell the audience this, I'll tell you this. If somebody said to me, hey, Barry, you can work with Dave Chappelle for 8.5, 9 years, and you could experience that journey with him. And, whatever, he makes his money, he does his thing, you make your money. Or, but it's going to end in 8.5, 9 years. Or when you see the future and you just say, I'm not going to do it. Of course I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it every time. I'm going to work with Bill Burr. I'm going to work with Dane Cook. I'm going to work with, Bert Kreischer. I'm going to work with Louis C.K. I'm going to work with all of them because Wanda Sykes, I remember Wanda Sykes just coming in my office and she'd always have take a little business card of mine and put it on the end of the desk and say, I'm kind of teetering here, Barry. We're kind of teetering together and can we move the thing over? And it's like, I remember all these stories of how.
Well, she took over as executive producer of Last Comic Standing.
That's right. That's right. It's all goes full circle. It's karma. It's karma. She but I love her. I love her.
She's a super talented lady.
So I have so many things. So when your first thing is, in my opinion, you have two things on your mind. Number one, service, take care of the shows that are there and make sure they do as well, if not better.
Correct.
Find new shows that are shows that I drive forward with my team that have my stamp on it. And if, God forbid, I get kicked to the curb, the next guy has to service those like The Voice.
Okay, so the truth is, Barry, I didn't have the shot caller job for long enough to see, I don't know, not even one full season of, maybe 2 full seasons of development. And at a time when the audience was scared to the wind and that the company was in its absolute infancy as far as the streaming was concerned. We were launching Peacock, right?
But there were shows that you brought forward that were respected shows.
So no, I have to say most of the shows that I ordered that were significant anyway are still on air. So I mean,
how can you say what you're saying?
Well, no, because they predate my ascendancy to the chairman. So I never had any real impact on the scripted business in terms of a full development cycle. And so I never executed, I think, on a development strategy, which is, again, no one has a development strategy, but I certainly did. But I couldn't execute on it in the time that I was there. Now, at the time also, there was an enormous demand for resources from the streaming business to get started, and that's not an enviable job. And
well, you can't make money in the beginning. You're bleeding money. The Peacock was bleeding money when you.
Well, and it was brand new business, but I fundamentally disagreed with its first 25 creative decisions in a way that was literally black and white to me in a profound way. It's probably one of the reasons why there was very little support from me staying at the company.
The first 25 in a row.
Yes. Or certainly the first significant programming announcements for Peacock, I couldn't stand behind a single one of them.
How many of the 25 are still going?
Wait, so 25 is an exaggeration.
I know. I'm sorry.
But let's say if it was 15-0.
Got it.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe there's one or two. But I'll tell you what, a couple of them jumped ship to Netflix and things like that. But I can't think of anything that's a lasting success that was from that initial startup phase.
I loved it. I was watching Jimmy Kimmel the other day with John Oliver. On one of Jimmy Kimmel's questions to John Oliver's. Before we get started, I just want to ask you a question. What's the difference between HBO and HBO Max? And John Oliver's like, I have no idea.
Well, it's really interesting because that was a kind of one that got away, which we're playing with the... I mean, John, we damn nearly bought that. They rightly ended up at HBO, but we definitely had the money to go all in on a weekly show. At the time, late night was in sort of, a lot of flux always. The economics have finally caught up with it. I mean, it's been a loss-making business for a long time. But we knew we needed to do something different. And funnily enough, I remember it was when there was a changeover happening, and I had dinner with Seth Meyers in New York. I was like, why do you want to be on every night? Just do one weekly. And partly it was because Bob Greenblatt and I had just taken a meeting with John Oliver and his manager.
And Bob Greenblatt was the president of NBC.
He was my predecessor. Yeah. And we took the pitch. I'm saying, we should do this. This would work on NBC. It's certainly the economics of a weekly show. And by the way, you still get to get the late night awards and stuff like that. Meanwhile, we've got show ponies that want to go to work 5 days a week because some people know they need that or they want the platform. Seth said to me, I want to be on. I know, because I said, look, in prime time or using prime time money, we could probably pay you what you get paid for 5 shows a week. I didn't say something like Blake Shelton, but the paychecks were different because of the economics. But it would have died on NBC because the content being what the content is on HBO. But it's interesting. The one that got away or one that got away.
The one thing I've learned more than anything else, if you're undeniable, you cannot be denied. There is no one out there that has the experience that I have in the entertainment business. Throughout my career, I've been humbled to work with over 25 of the most extraordinary comedy entertainers in the world. One time, a fluke, but 25 times, it's crazy. I'm here to help you create holy shit moments that will blow people the fuck away. You want to do a 5-minute set for late night? I can help you. You want to produce your feature film? I can make it happen. You want to shoot your hour special? Done. You want to do a documentary with Emmy award-winning producers? I can make it happen. It doesn't matter what you want to do. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And this is your opportunity.
Do you feel when you take over, there's always that producer or that executive or somebody who in your heart, that guy fucking said something about me to somebody 3 years ago, or that guy tried to me over what? Look, are you allowed to hold grudges as a network president?
No, I don't think you are, really. You'd be reluctant. It's one of those things, is like, there are certain things that I think, I've heard network executives and people that work at companies say, to be honest, we've run out of money. What a fucking ridiculous thing to say. Like, we're closed, we're not buying anymore. Are you kidding me? You would put out there that you wouldn't take every single pitch or that pitch, and you always if you're like taking a girl out on a date and asking her to split the bill. Sorry, I'm old-fashioned. Or do you mind?
I don't think the dresses fall to the floor.
No, but in either way, it's not how you seal the deal. So
no grudges.
you can't afford grudges, but I was extremely naive about, I always bluntly, because I used to sell, and I'm selling again, but as a salesman, which I was before I was a buyer, that I remember having a conversation with a network president that was a little like this. Like, I'm not bringing creative people to meetings here anymore. It's just frankly embarrassing how they're treated by your executives. I'm like, this is a comedy department? You're having, because I didn't just do, I did scripted before I was at NBC. It's unacceptable. Why? These are artists, and they come into a dead room and sort of am forced to act like show ponies. There's no energy. I can't bring people anymore. We're taking you off. We're not pitching here anymore.
Here's something I never understood about a meeting.
Yeah.
For the life of me, never understood. Could be pitching to 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. At least 1 or 2 of them are like this the whole meeting.
Not me.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
They got their spiral notebook. They're writing in it. They can't fucking record the meeting and then transcribe the thing. They gotta be writing things down in their notebook. While
No, I know, but there's a cadre of people. I think it's totally changed. There was a generational thing where, because it was notionally meant to be so competitive in the room, you know, that these people are going to see all 5 networks in one day or whatever it is, that you didn't want to give her anything away because it was poker. If you showed too much enthusiasm, it's just going to cost you. I never subscribed to any of those theories, which is, I thought that the most transparent thing was, one, to lock in on the pitch and really listen, and then, heaven forbid, give your honest first impression thoughts and feedback, which nothing ever got me in more trouble than giving that.
This happened to me twice in my lifetime. And it's something that somebody just loves to hear and loves to talk about. How'd the meeting go? They bought it in the room.
Yeah.
How many times did somebody come in, out of 100% of all the pitches that you were in, how many times did you say, listen, cancel all your meetings, we're doing the show?
I would say that happened every time we bought a show.
Oh, it did?
Yeah. Which is, again, it's so different because I just described to a slightly different philosophy, which was unbelievably, now everyone just thought broadcast was broadcast. But I believe that every one of those brands was a self-sorting, completely discrete brand and audience, where if it was right for another one, particularly where we were, it wouldn't be right for me. And that if it was right for us, I could be very convincing right there and then in the room, not about cancel all your meetings, we're paying a massive premium, about why we were the right place for the show. And that somewhere else, feel free to take it somewhere else, but I think you'd be really silly to do that. That would be kind of my approach to that.
Now, for all people out there who have products and have pitches and are going into meetings, probably Zoom meetings now or whatever.
I'm sorry about that.
There were certain people. There were 3 kinds of people in my mind that sold television shows in the room. There was the underdog. The talented person who came in and just with their piece of paper that looked like it got eaten by their dog. But you know they're a great talent. You know that there's something happening. Hasn't happened yet. The world doesn't know yet. But there's something about this person that's great. But they're coming in and they're kind of like they're not the greatest pitcher in the world, but they're okay. They have no bells and whistles. They're the underdog. They're the person you have that $75 in a cookie jar somewhere that's designed to, okay, we'll give that person a little script deal there or whatever. And there's a person like Jeff Aploff that has popcorn machines, marching bands. They're coming in.
Who's told you about him?
I've interviewed him. I know him very well. It's like
Why? It's so amazing you pick him out. 'Cause
every
if I
pitch-
would have given him as an example.
every pitch meeting that he has is a Broadway production. He's acting out shit in the room. There's a guy who's pretending to be the host that's in the conference room. It's like, and you're like, what the just happened here? It's like, and then there's the people like, well, let's say, I remember when we pitched Last Comic Standing, where we had a great sizzle reel of comedians. We figured out what it was going to be. We took some found footage from certain places, but we just, the warm up was always really important to me because I always loved being in a room and just making people laugh and just setting up people. Or if I was in with a comedian, to have them shit on me, imitate my voice, do whatever, just warm up the room. And then just pitch the show a little bit and then put the video in that was extraordinary, take it out, and then just do it. But just nothing like crazy like Jeff, but nothing kind of like the, person.
Well, look, I think that,
which does it matter? Does one matter to you? Or
it really doesn't matter. But what I would, if we take the Jeff example and quickly just discuss it, because if he's been a guest, he knows I'm incredibly fond of him. But I do give him as a reference point, which is, and again, the aperture's so different. If you're one of 1,000 shows and you're just at one of these schlop factories, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to be one of less than a dozen picks in a year at a place, or that you certainly want to stand out, that Jeff is able to. And again, he's pitching game shows and things that have a sort of variety element and a sort of energy to them that he takes as a matter of pride. Doesn't matter if, the milk's sour in his cornflakes. It doesn't matter what's going on in his life. And to know him is to absolutely just adore that energy, not just in the pitch. And again, I have to say that if you're a boss or someone who has a cone with your name on it when you arrive on the set, just assume that people might be nicer to you than they are to other people. And yeah, I sort of say that if you're going to come in with that energy in the pitch and then you're not there every day on set doing exactly the same thing, you've got to be consistent with the energy that you give off. And at the same time, as you have an example like him in the world of pitching, there are others that come in with altogether a more studious. There was one producer, I remember, explaining an incredibly complex elimination ceremony in this almost pseudoscientific way. It's horses for courses. And what invariably is the cliche, it really is about the idea and the work rather than the people.
So you always knew after the first two sentences of the line, of the log line, that what it is?
No, I don't think so. And if I gave that impression in pitches, which is, it's sort of hard not to try and want to project confidence and infallibility.
I love pitching. I never sold anything else to you, but I love pitching to you. We sold Whitney. That was after you.
Well, no, it wasn't.
No, that wasn't.
But no, so I mean,
we sold that, and that went 2 years. I thought that was Bob Green.
Yeah, it was. But I have to say that with hindsight and foresight, I felt like that was a show that could still be on air.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
So that's unfair saying I didn't sell things, but when with you, I didn't. But I always looked forward to it. You always look forward to it because, when you go into a pitch meeting, and this is for the audience as well, you don't know if somebody's, sister just had a baby, their father died, they're getting a divorce, they're just got engaged, they got a promotion. You don't know, and you don't know how many meetings happened before you. You don't know what was said before you. And so you have nothing. You have no evidence of anything, and you're going in and you have to make a difference to people. But I always found that you made a difference. Every time you walked in the room. It was like, my God, this guy's, I know he's been through the ringer this week or today, but he's treating me like I I'm meant to be here and I deserve to be here. And as self-deprecating as I always was, that meant something.
Look, I feel that that's really the least you can give, which is, look, I'm transparent. My tail is wagging 99% of the time. And then probably 1% of the time, if people see my tail isn't wagging, they should cancel meetings or make sure that I go home and get some rest or something like that. But mainly, I think, bluntly, the world of Zoom has made it very difficult for, if your audience is, how am I going to sell a show, is sort of the order of the day, that I completely understand why the world has moved to Zoom pitches. Because I used to think about those producers that would be like, we're doing 5 pitches in one day. And I'm like, God, I hope you like the car you drive. And how could you possibly how's this good for anyone? It would be like, this would be particularly like big scripted pitches where maybe there were 2 co-producing studios and everyone needed to send their junior, senior vice president of whatever it was, along with the other person, along with the talent. And there's 2 agents. And everyone's converging in, 4.8 liter V8s on the valley at the same time from 5 different destinations. And then they're schlepping to ABC and schlepping down the road. Why? Because we need to be a part. I think that technology has enabled the people that are taking pitches and the people who are making pitches to actually operate far more efficiently. It changes the discipline completely, because whether you're coming in, you don't, and yes, a lot of Zoom pitches will start with a little bit of get to know you, but it's very, very hard to pretend, unless you know someone well outside of work and are socializing with them, either in the sort of the school line and whatever. But again, very few people sort of live and work in LA anymore. So unless you have a firm personal relationship with someone before a Zoom, it's going to be very hard to forge one over a Zoom pitch. So I think that you do need to think about adapting your pitch style and your modality for doing it if it's a Zoom pitch. I do honestly think that once in a while, I would say you probably have permission to do this, but if it's going to be a meeting where a relationship with the talent is at the heart of everything, how you would do that without substantial amounts of in-person meetings in order to establish that relationship. But again, I think that happens when it's talent. But if you're a producer, a writer, or someone that's got a great idea and the mode of pitching is Zoom, you will have to adapt your style, but also you'll have to be on time or early, ready to go with a great internet connection, and don't think your background doesn't matter. So
yeah, I always love the warm-up. To me, the warm-up is the most important thing. And if you have a comedy background and you can be improvisational, you can always make people laugh no matter what mood they're in.
Yeah.
It sets the tone.
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
5,
6.
6 degrees of separation.
6 degrees of separation. I'm going to mention some names.
Okay.
You could tell me a short story, a word.
This is part of the format. I didn't get to this on the Mark Maron episode.
Well, that's because you didn't listen to Double Speed.
Yeah.
Simon Cowell.
My favorite one that it's PG, and they're all PG, was Simon Cowell making a rare appearance at the NBC Upfront, which is I think they still have upfronts, but it used to be a big effing deal.
Yeah, Radio City Music Hall.
Was at Radio City Music Hall, which is a huge stage.
All for the advertisers that they kiss their asses.
But and Bob was my boss at the time, Greenblatt, and someone I would describe as our chief of staff who never wants to be a part of the story, says Bob is arranging to see Simon the day before the Upfront, and we go to the Four Seasons, and we go up to the presidential suite of the Four Seasons in Midtown there, and at the appointed hour, and I was like, I'm not being funny, but it seems incredibly early for Simon. No, we totally. I was like, like midday. Are you sure? Noon. You've looked at, is this the 24-hour clock? Is this midnight tonight? We're meant to be meeting him because he's not an early riser. And lo and behold, bing bong at the suite, and this person opens the door. It's one of the people that's regularly works with Simon, and just sort of complete amazement that we're there. And we're ushered. It's a big enough suite that there are several rooms in, and a room with a massive grand piano. I don't know your taste in movies, but have you seen The Greatest Showman?
No.
That huge, it's a wonderful film. My kids love it, what have you. But Simon, I think, had been traveling a lot, and so somewhere I think that the P.T. Barnum story had blended with his own life in a way where he was completely obsessed with this movie in a really like a slightly unconditional fan way. He loved the film, and it was rarely not in the conversation at the time with both the producers of the show, and every time Simon would and so we arrive in this room that he sort of just say has the funk of the night before, and the young lady who's the maid or housekeeper or whatever is like, he's asleep. And Bob had 15 other go-sees that we were going bang, bang, bang through New York the day before the upfront, doing chores, should we say. Not that visiting Simon at the presidential suite of the Four Seasons should be a chore. And Bob plays the piano really well. In a kind of, he can sit down and pretty well play tunes, right? Mm-hmm. I think he told me he used to do it in a bar when he was younger. And he sat down and he started playing pretty well. I didn't have any sheet music or anything, but he started playing The Greatest Showman.
Wow.
At the grand piano. As there was also some activity going on in the other rooms. And then Simon comes out looking like someone had just thrown a bucket of water over to Bob playing The Greatest Showman. And it just always stuck in my mind as like one of the most absurd things I'd ever seen.
And did he say, "What are you doing here?" Or did he...
No, he's like, Bob's his usual charming self, but let's just say fresh from bed.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Okay, Simon Cowell.
Kelly Clarkson.
Kelly's Kelly. She's a wonderful, wonderful performer. She's a generationally talented musician wrapped in one of the best human beings on the planet. And the first time I ever met her, and she don't remember this, but there was a season of The Voice where the coaches would occasionally perform with their contestants, or in fact it was not part of the format of the show, but you'd see the coach perform with their contestants. But for whatever reasons, one of the coaches didn't want to perform with their contestant. And whatever the reasons, it's a show, people have different reasons. Like, you can like and dislike people. It was slightly strange that a coach wouldn't want to perform with one of their contestants. And it was also the day before rehearsals for this performance and a live show were meant to be happening. So this contestant's like, what, I'm going to be the only person singing alone? That's not fair. And if you've worked in network television, the words "not fair" in a competition for money mean that lawyers start running around, right? And not fair. And said to the producers, phoned Kelly Clarkson, and 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, 20 minutes later, she was on set rehearsing with this contestant.
Nice.
Smashed it. And also just couldn't have been more lovely to everyone around her. And so she's an amazing person, and an incredibly hard worker as well.
American Ninja Warrior.
Yeah. I got a call from...
Is that Matt Ice? Matt Ice?
It's pretty close. He's doing it. I got a call from a journalist who had... who said, "You realize you've got the final." He started mentioning a show, Sasuke. You've got the final of Sasuke is on NBC. This is a big deal because it had been on G4 on cable, And in order for them to land a deal with Reebok for 500 grand, we agreed to one transmission on Saturday night on NBC. And I was like, Sasuke, I studied Japanese and I lived in Japan. I was like, what is this? And I just said yes to a colleague very quickly about it. And then the ratings came in for the like one-off finale, and it was like something there. And we take a look at it. And I think that show is still on air.
Yes.
And it's amazing to me what an epic engine it's got on it in terms of the people that now it's multi-generational. So there are whole families where the kids saw their parents compete and those kids are now competing. It's a phenomenon in fitness, and it's a phenomenon in people's recreational lives. So I would say from a happy accident, then we got our hands on it, and Arthur and the producers, we really produced the shit out of that show and turned it into a thing. And I think I've got a special love for that format.
Jennifer Lopez.
J-Lo. That's so funny. I was so I will only go by my experiences here, because when I had Benny Medina and Jennifer have been very, very good partners, and Elaine, her producing partner as well, done a lot of stuff together. And I could not describe a more uniformly professional and easygoing person to work with than Jennifer. And I've heard different versions of what, when someone comes with an entourage, there's normally a really good reason for it. And she's a super professional, but I also found her incredibly warm, inclusive with everyone, wanted to, enjoys life and wants to have fun. And I'll never forget the first time I met her, because she came in to pitch with her then husband, Mark Antony. And I'm, did you ever come across a guy called Mark Graboff who used to work at NBC?
Course.
So Mark he's a lovely guy, an incredibly smart businessman, but he never really seemed to get any fun meetings to go, because I think he got given what I would say, sorry, rudely, back at the BBC, we would say he was head of bogs and boilers, i.e. he had to do all of the hard work while everyone else clowned. That's a exaggeration, but I said, you'll never believe who's coming in for a meeting. You should join this. You don't get to go to many pitches. This one's going to be a doozy. Why? I said, it's J-Lo and Mark Antony. And he goes, I'm fascinated. Like, literally, like, you know, it's kind of like... So he came and so I said, he was then the co-chairman of NBC. This is the co-chairman of NBC joining us. And boy, what a performance that pitch was. But also, Jennifer, so much better in every way in the flesh and in person than her public person. You know, when she's someone that doesn't disappoint, is what I would say.
Isn't that what it's all about?
Yeah. It is what it's all about, actually, Barry.
That's right. And you are not disappointing.
It's a good list.
Deal or no deal? It was rumored that there was a list of 10 hosts.
So it's before my time, deal or no deal. The casting of Howie is before my time. Yeah.
But you know everything. Rumored that they had a list of 10 people. They went out to all 10. They passed. And another list of 10 people after that. They passed. They had a third list of 10 people. They passed. And rumor has it that Howie may have been number 33 and said yes.
So I don't know the number. I don't think it's quite that many, because it's these things become faintly folkloric. However, boy oh boy, think about what the people that passed must think about that decision when they look at their bank balance and their public profile. And certainly Howie's is a career I respect extraordinarily in terms of its longevity, but also again, there's someone with an engine that runs on, you know, he's one, he's a very good producer and a very bright man. I mean, he comes up with as many terrible ideas as he does good ideas, but it's a wonderful.
What is it Confucius used to say? Get knocked down 8 times, get up 9, or get knocked down 7 times, get up 8.
But he has a wonderful energy source.
He had the talk show that didn't work. I remember that I was given a cue card of Johnny Carson's. He was in the same.
He pissed off Johnny, didn't he?
I don't know what happened, but he was working in that same studio, and but you know what's amazing is that when you see great people, the greatest people in the world have so many things that don't work or so many things that go wrong.
I would say that to be a national treasure in 2 countries, Canada and the United States, is no mean feat. And I would say I give him national treasure status. He is immediately recognizable. He always gives 110% on show day. And you couldn't have someone who's more uniformly charming to everyone on every level. I know his makeup artist. That lady has to get a lot of slap on that head. She loves him. I know people that have worked with him for years and years and years and do so willingly and happily and with a spring in their step. So, yeah, that's Howie. That's not the deal or no deal story, but yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Ellen DeGeneres.
She's a neighbor now, so she's a neighbor I would very much take a cup of sugar.
So what you're saying is you're not living in Valencia.
What? No, I'm not living in Valencia. No.
I'm joking.
I'm living in Oxfordshire at the moment, actually. And
you're living where?
In Oxfordshire, in the UK. I'm here. I'm visiting just for this podcast, Barry. No, so that's a total. There is so much folklore around.
It's somewhere in between that framing. Remember?
Okay, so let me frame the story from my point of view.
Somewhere in between what you just said. Is
my personality
for this podcast and Bob Green type 7 minutes.
The first time I met her was probably on the phone, and it was a perfectly jolly phone conversation or something like that. When we met in person, I initially thought, God, she really doesn't like me. And she may just say, predisposed to just not liking, what am I meant to say? It's a quite large physical presence. All the people she worked with were quite physically small and quiet in one way. And I'm quite large and quite a presence. I found her to be one of the most predictable and easiest to work with superstars. I mean, she was a massive star when I worked with her, no doubt. And she couldn't have been more focused and professional. And then what I realized is that she is someone that is incredibly guarded. And by the way, those daily shows, and anyone that does one of those shows with, 166 episodes a year, wouldn't matter if it's in late night or in daytime, anyone that's producing at that volume, it is a job that is almost perfectly designed to drive everyone a little bit crazy. The people that make the show, the people on the show, and the talent that does it. Right? Okay, so Jay Leno never had a different executive producer for the entire run of show. Neither did she. Jimmy Fallon's probably had 16 executive producers, okay? There's a different flavor on every one of those long-running sets. And I just found her to be incredibly easy to work with. But she was coming to us to make a game show. So, and then every time I'd bumped into her, you know, the way you bump into people like Ellen DeGeneres would be like at whatever, an award show or somewhere. She was uniformly delightful and very smart and very switched on and very locked in and connected. She wasn't like a lot of other talent that I'd met as well. And I think that as a person who I think just gave an awful lot back to her audiences, that if occasionally the fatigue showed, whether it was with crew or things, it's completely understandable to me. And she seems to be thriving in her post-show years. So
absolutely.
Was that 6?
That was beautiful.
That was 6 big 6 degrees of separation.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go 2 more.
Oh my, go ahead.
The Voice.
Yeah. Look, it's a show I think that's almost became a punchline about me and for me. And in fact, it was like Seth Meyers at the upfront sticking up a photo of me saying, here's the man most likely to mention a voice in a sentence. Now, you've got to understand, when the ratings, a couple of times in my life, the ratings for a show have come in, and it has immediately and transparently been a complete game changer from every angle you look at it. And people are going to make staggering amounts of money. Dancing with the Stars was one where I remember being on what I call Lipstone Point, which is this part of Fryman Canyon where my cell phone didn't work. And as a consequence, the ratings were coming in by phone, and you used to have to dial up this number. And my agent at the time called me and said, the ratings are this or that. I can't even remember what it was. I was like, well, is that good? He goes, it's ridiculous. Okay. And I was like, oh, okay. After the premiere of The Voice, and this happened in.
You remember what shows you were up against?
With
the same time slot on the other network?
I can't even remember with dancing. It was the summer, so it would have been any odd show, to be honest. Sorry for anyone making summer shows. Summer's the same as year round these days. The phone call. So the company, you got to understand, is that, and by the way, I saw that there were pumpkins and stuff and Halloween decorations out, which means another, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 people are going to be getting pink slips in the next 3 months. The human resources department of large companies like to call it pumpkin season because they need to get you out by the end of the year. So if you haven't got your marching orders by the time that there are pumpkins on the ground. So I'm just reminded every time I see that this is a very bad time of year for people working in corporate America. But we had just been through a merger. So you've got really fresh bosses, including ones that have just paid GE billions of dollars and gone through all kinds of hoops to buy the company. Ironically, the exact reverse hoops of what's required today to buy a company. And I got a phone call from Brian Roberts, from Philadelphia, showbiz capital of the world. And it was Brian saying, and he said with some kind of convoluted golfing metaphor that Steve, who was the CEO, Steve Burke, had explained to him that as far as Comcast was concerned, the ratings of The Voice objectively were like a blind man going up to the first tee of Augusta and hitting a hole-in-one at the US Open.
Wow.
Or the Masters, I forget which they play that. Because the optics of success we bought the fourth place network. And again, there are very few things, like Jeff Zucker said, I've only hired you because we need Dancing with the Stars. He goes, you get one of these things right, you go from fourth to first. Now, he never presided over the success of The Voice, but the decisions were made prior to Comcast arriving. Although, because of the size of the transaction, it was suggested that someone sent a gingerly worded email to our future bosses that we were about to commit a lot of money to a new singing show. So they did know about it, but it landed in their lap. So, and then it really drove their confidence and in the whole medium, insofar as they were prepared to invest. They could still see life in the old dog yet. So that was the primary effect for The Voice. But there are that would be quite a long oral history podcast in terms of some of the shenanigans and things that happened on the show.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Last name, Donald Trump. The stories you can tell.
Without came on, without me paying more taxes, or let's face it, Barry, it's a funny old world we're living in at the moment, isn't it? So as the host I was there for the Celebrity Apprentice, and the season after it had kicked off. So the first time the Celebrity Apprentice happened was because of the strike. And Ben Silverman was like, why don't we get the Apprentice was cancelled.
Ben Silverman was the president at the time.
Yeah. And the show was never a hit. beyond its first season, like a staggering loss of ratings from one season to the
What do you
next.
think the reason of that was?
Well, it was really fresh when it first came out as The Apprentice, okay? But then somewhere it's like, I don't know, the facade of someone actually getting a real career crumbled, or I don't know, but certainly the next time we made The Civilian Apprentice, as we called it, after we made one season of The Civilian Apprentice after we started The Celebrity Apprentice, and that was, I want to say it was pretty right in the heart of the recession that followed the financial collapse, just as I joined the company. And that it was losers. Like, I can't believe it was just the worst season we ever made. But the celebrity aspect of it immediately sort of gave you, well, it's no secret, it's probably the same DNA strain as Bravo or something like that. I don't know. It's sort of a slightly different vibe doing it as The Celebrity Apprentice. So, and I guess I was notionally his boss at the network. So I would talk to him very regularly about the ratings of the show. And you know what? He had a very dynamic relationship with understanding the numbers. So we had to keep a fax machine in my office for the longest time. I wish we should have kept copies of that signature. You just pop up all the time. Because the only person still faxing, because Donald never had a PC or a laptop, or he'd never been on the internet until, you go into his office, there was no computer. So he would get faxed the ratings by Tom Beerbaum, our kind of analyst, with the kind of talking points for the ratings. And then he would fax them to my office with like notes and arrows, just the signature way that Trump communicates, extremely visually, particularly if he's presented with a complex documents with numbers, look, we're doing great. He genuinely had an energy about wanting to be successful and wanting the show to go along. But okay, so I don't know if you ever watched the show. I mean, I didn't watch every frame of television I was responsible for watching, but Sonny, I mean, it was a good watch for a few years, and I would actually watch it live as it aired frequently. One of the reasons being is that the producing team on that show was fantastic. So you could waste your time watching endless cuts, giving notes on it, but the first network rough cut at a pinch you could have aired, because it came from Mark Burnett Productions, and at the time, and probably still the case, they had all the best editors and people that really knew what they were doing. So I didn't watch the show. I save it as a treat, because whatever would happen in the pre-recorded episodes, the finale was always live. So the outcome, there were no spoilers if I knew roughly what was going on. You could watch it. I could watch it and enjoy it. But the one season that was an intense elevation of the success of the show was the one that Joni Rivers won. And, I mean, we at NBC, but also just, she was so emotional about the return to NBC, and the fact that she was doing it on Celebrity Apprentice was sort of incredibly a matter of pride for us, but at the same time also like sort of melancholy that, Joan is on the Celebrity Apprentice, because we revered her. I still do. She was someone that made me howl with laughter. Just every single time I saw her, I knew something good was coming. Anyway, she crushed the season. And she was just, you know how she would. She just threw herself into it. And she was an older woman then, and her energy level was just insane. And it was New York, which was home turf for her. So it was her gadding around the Upper East Side doing stuff. And at the same time, she was up against this woman, Annie Duke, who's a professional, in the finale, the professional poker player. Now, as it happened, I was in Chicago in the back of a car, coming from a meeting, going to the airport. The phone rings, it's DJT or whatever. And it's the night of the finale of that Annie Duke, Joan Rivers season. Now, the competition technically is the person that raises the most money wins, but there's some discretion in it. And I can't remember, but I think Annie Duke had outraised money for Joan Rivers. And he calls me, he goes, so I'm just checking in with you. And by the way, always respectful, didn't call me boss, didn't realize I could completely normal working relationship, except for the fact that his instincts frequently were just completely counterintuitive and opposite. It's like, I'm gonna give it to, I think it's Annie Duke's one. I'm gonna give it to Annie Duke. I was like, no, you're not. No, it's Joan Rivers. He goes, oh, Joan Rivers. I was like, I didn't have to get firm in any way, but I was never ever going to have any other result other than that. I don't know whether we broke the rules. I don't think we did, but it was so obvious that in the eyes of the audience, Joan Rivers had won, but in the eyes of Donald Trump, Annie Duke had won. And so I just think it's sort of slightly emblematic of, it's not easy if you're, I suppose, the boss on a show looking down at all of this stuff. And sometimes you need a little help with the really, really important answer to a question.
Awesome. Your proudest moment in show business?
And maybe yet to come, which I'm always hopeful of. But I don't come from, like a lot of people in the entertainment industry, it's sort of our way to get our families. You sacrifice a lot because you know that there's money in their hills, and you'll give up a lot, right? And so in terms of sort of my proudest showbiz moment might happen in the most random places at the random times and really frequently, which is I'm approached. I can't even cannot even count how many times someone says to me, you don't know me, but we bought a house. You don't know me, but I put my kids through college because. You don't know me, but people that come up to me when I'm, I don't know, with the kids in Beeman Park or at a Little League game in Encino or whatever, just, let's just say crawling around the valley floor, okay, that I'm really proud of how many people earn a good living for a very long time. A lot of people that I never even knew on shows that whatever the public-facing story from a ratings or a financial success or a critical success point of view, that the real success for me was buttering as many people's bread as possible all over this town. And so that's what I'm proud of, is that there are still shows that are on air doing precisely that.
My second to last question, before I ask it, I'm going to preface it by telling you that, and it's a question I ask everybody at the end of the song, but I'm prefacing it by saying that however you decide to answer it, you have full editing rights. If you decide that you don't want to,
it's very generous of you.
Okay, so. Your biggest disappointment in show business and how you used it to fuel yourself to the next level.
Well, so I cursorily mentioned that I involuntarily left my job in 2020 in what I can only describe as a very confusing time for the whole world, where my family and friends and parents and things had to read things about me that were completely inconsistent with their experience about me. Whatever the moment of 2020 was, when, I don't espouse any conspiracy theories whatsoever, but as a company, we knew about the arrival of COVID-19 when the workforce in our theme park in China downed tools. And when we went off the job on March 13th, 2020, was many months after we knew this thing was coming.
What date? That's a fascinating thing you just said. Just again, don't lose your place. Around what time did you notice the theme park numbers stop?
Well, it's not the numbers. We were in construction.
Oh, in construction.
On the Beijing theme park.
I'm sorry.
The company was. I'm not involved in the park. So
at what point did you hear that you knew that they were...
Well, there's something going on that means... And then I saw that SBS Australia documentary. And so my disappointment is not... a lot of people lose their jobs. A lot of people get fired. I lost mine in circumstances that definitely had a broader impact on my standing in the industry, people's perception of me, I've had very difficult conversations with, my own kid. Why did you get fired? At the time when everyone was scared and terrified, where the solution to most of my problems would have involved getting people in a room, not so I could mesmerize them with my physical presence or whatever, but I'm sorry, we've got to knock this on the head. And I couldn't really, I could not execute on my vision for what that company would have been under my leadership, because there were very obvious reasons why I couldn't keep my job in the moment, and with hindsight, taking accountability for it, because of relationships with certain people in the company that weren't working out for me at the time. Why? Well, under the previous boss, none of that would have ever happened. Why? Okay. For better or for worse, executives, people have strengths or weaknesses. Everyone got paid their bonuses under me 12 years running, okay? It's not a boss's sole job to make sure that the bills are paid, but it is a very large part of it. Then I would say I would, at this point, probably start my career with an unconditional apology for the fact that I speak and use words very differently to a lot of people. And it's not an excuse for sort of unfettered, unkind behavior or anything. But I think it's fair to say people know when I'm displeased with their work. And also with hindsight, that I could be a little unkind in the process might be a truth, okay? And I'm totally fine with that. No one, it hasn't cost anyone more than me losing a job. I could literally put dollars and cents on it. But my greatest disappointment was that I wasn't able to execute in an unencumbered way on what would have been my content plan for the television side of that company. And based on my track record, I literally know where the share price would be based on different decisions that would have been made. You probably wouldn't be flogging off your cable company. There'd be all sorts of things that were impacted differently if in that absolutely incisive inflection point in the business, different things have been done. So I'm just disappointed for the thousands of people who've lost their jobs as a result of the excesses of decision-making made by their then bosses. And so that's my disappointment, is that I didn't get to complete the project of my chairmanship at that company. Having said that, you know what? You've dealt with careers where you've seen fallow periods, this, that, and change must happen. And I'd got too comfortable in corporate America. I'd probably compromised family life for long enough. So I, strangely, at about the time, you typically an ascendancy to what I describe as something with CEO level responsibilities. You probably want your kids to be off at college, but I had young kids. And I've got older kids as well. And the gift that I was handed in terms of a sabbatical at a time when in the pandemic, work was just terrible for everyone, whether you were in live touring or any of these companies, the workplace changed in some ways for the better, but everything was weird for 3 years. And it was 3 years that I got to spend with my young kids, which if I had been doing that job without a pandemic, I would have risked, again, missing everything that they would have done. So the disappointment is also coupled with an extraordinary, happiness about the reasons, the things that I could do because I wasn't working a 75 to 85 hour week with 5 dinners. You know what I mean? So
last question, and it's kind of like a 2-part question.
Okay.
Number one, what advice would you give to the artist or the producer or the creator who is preparing to walk into a room to pitch their idea to an executive to make it undeniable and have the best job of selling it? And what advice do you have for the young executive who wants to be in television or film and wants to figure out how to navigate through all these different people wanting the same things from their careers as you want, but to get to the level that you got to?
I think that mine is not a path that is particularly normal, or isn't. It was so specific to the timing and the changes in the business, which is, yes, the alternative department suddenly became very important in every one of these companies because of the changed economics. So I can't hand out, again, I don't think that it could be entirely based on my own experience, but just the my observations about people who kind of pitch successfully, or a producer that, again, let's say we forget people that have got, existing check. We're talking about people that are in the career development or third job, second job, fourth job, young executives or creatives that, again, I could not hand out advice about how to get I could probably, how to be big on YouTube. That's not, but if you're saying I want to be accessing broadly speaking, the FANG plus traditional media companies, so obviously the streamers, but also the companies that all own streamers, if it's about addressing that, all of which is now a traditional media audience, right? It's all one big blob. I can't hand out advice about how to access that right now, because even though I'm in and out pitching and selling, it's so subjective and personal to your own personality. Like, you and I would pitch things so completely differently. And I cannot believe this is what I want for all creatives, all talent, all executives, and all artists. And it is going to sound so trite, but in a world where we know that machine learning and artificial intelligence, and even if you scrape the minimal surface of using the toolkit that's available to the creative community now, it really can give you the heebie-jeebies, and it can shake you to your core in terms of authenticity. I can't believe I would just kind of resort to such a fucking cliche. But in a world of the generic, or a world where everything, whether it's car designs, and you go, is that a Jaguar or a Nissan? Like, you look at, like, I'd say a mid-size SUV, and they're all the same. And if I look at the television landscape, I find a lot of things now moving into the world of the completely generic. And in a world where the toolkit is available to everyone, where have an authentic voice, have an authentic presence, and don't be in a job where you're having to be pretending to be someone else. Whether it's a junior law, I always used to say, we were in a big corporate environment managing career path where, and again, this may be a bad thing, but if you came in as a manager in our legal or business affairs department, it would take you 15 years to be an SVP or an EVP, 15 to 20 years. Now, technology has already compressed that career path. I'm looking at an EVP at an average traditional media company, and they are very young, it's great, have a young workforce, I get it, but they couldn't possibly have had the specific transactional experience that previously would have earned you an EVP stripes. So everything has changed. But within that, if I think about the people that shine through as executives, they were themselves and they're authentically themselves. And again, that can go down to what you do in your private life. You should be able to live a complete version of yourself in the workplace, and places that don't accept that, probably not somewhere I would advise working. So you shouldn't have to pretend to be something you're not in order to progress. But if you're not progressing because of something you are, go somewhere else.
Awesome. Paul, this has been amazing. I love this. I'm so grateful that you obliged me and did this interview. And
my podcast is going to be called Barry Katz is Still Talking to Me.
I would always talk to you, even if you told me to go f myself. So
No, you've been a solid buddy over the years, and I really appreciate it. And I also have to say, that like I say, I haven't been an avid watcher of your podcast, but I have noticed you a lot, and also because you've got a very, again, a very authentic and very heartfelt desire to lift other people up. And I say that goes back to, like, if you haven't listened to the Mark Maron episode, it's like Barry Katz is a genuine comedy legend. He says it about himself a lot, but when you hear a genuine comedy legend tell the stories about it, but the theme of lifting people up is what Barry has always been kind of known for. Not plucked from obscurity always, but frequently seeing talent in performers before others, and now giving back and saying, well, okay, how do we hand this success on to another generation? And you put a lot of time and effort into it, Barry, and I think that a lot of people have noticed it. So I appreciate you.
I'm so grateful, man. Thank you so much for saying that. I just always, I don't know what it is. I was saying to somebody last night that they talk about the money. Everybody talks about the money all the time. And I've never been the guy that, at the beginning of the year, okay, this is what I'm going to make. This is what's happening here. I never even think about the money. Now, granted, everybody wants to feel more comfortable when they have money, but I don't want to think about it. I don't care. If I just get my head down and I connect people and I am a catalyst for people and I'm a champion for people, the world will have a plan. And
Good man.
I'm very grateful. I'm so, so grateful. Thanks, buddy.
Barry, see you soon.
All right.